It must be Friday night because it's time for another episode of the
The
Play
play
Callers.
callers. Y'all
What's
know who it
going on,
is.
y'all? My name is Steve Abbas, one half of the dynamic duo, joined as always by my co-host, the one and the only.
That would be me, Cool McCain. It's another Friday night. Time to get busy.
Yes, sir. So, man, March Madness is living up to its name already. The NFL free agency period is on day like what 4 now. So we got some stuff to talk about with that. The NBA trade deadline coming up here soon. So starting to see some stuff happening with that as well. So lots to talk about, man. Lots to talk about. But I think everyone would agree you gotta start with this Ohio State Oral Roberts story. Crazy game. You know, they were down. They had a chance at the end to tie it up, send it to overtime. Got, I think it was like 3 or 4 looks at threes, trying to tie it up. Just could not knock the shot down. So just a crazy ending. 15 taking down a 2.
Yep. I mean, the best thing about March Madness is you're going to have this every year, right? You're going to have teams that, for some reason, they match up well in that specific game against the team they're playing, and they pull out upsets. It's one of the things that makes it, the madness, really.
Yep. It's the most wonderful time of year.
Most people would say maybe Christmas as well, but hey, I'm going to roll with you, and let's just make
Those
it March
people,
Madness.
those people don't host a sports talk show. That's the difference.
Some of them might, sadly enough.
Yes. I mean, I would agree that Christmas is the most wonderful time of year when we're not talking sports. But, we're talking sports right now. So,
well, man, tell us. I believe that there's been another one of those, we call them upsets, but one of those 12-5s that seem to always happen already.
listen, if you have not picked a 12-5 upset on any of your bracket, you clearly have never watched NCAA basketball, because it happens basically every single year. It's going to happen at least once. So, yeah, we had another one. Oregon State upset Tennessee. And I haven't looked at the score recently, but I know Oklahoma State was struggling against Liberty too. So another upset possibly brewing.
Yeah, Liberty's turned into a strong sports school here in the last few years. So that'd be interesting to watch them to see if that if they start to be more consistent in their sports, and see if they start getting a little bit of that national respect that comes with being consistent.
I actually just checked in on the score. So Oklahoma State has actually taken the lead back. They are up 58-52 with about basically 4 minutes left in the game. So, but it was a little questionable for 4 minutes. So that's the good thing I think about March Madness that people don't really talk enough about is with basketball, you only have like 5 guys on the court at a time. Mm-hmm. So even if your 5 guys are more talented than the other team's 5 guys, sometimes you have some depth that can come in, and a small school might have a better depth. They might be able to just have that one guy who can push them over the top. So it's not like football. Football, you very rarely see these kind of upsets because you're talking 53 people on the field at one time. Well, not at one time, but you're talking 53 people who are actually playing, not even including the backups. So for a small school to have the same kind of depth to be able to compete with a big school usually doesn't happen. Basketball, it's a lot more even playing field. Especially if you get the right matchup.
Yeah, I agree. And on top of that, you look at a lot of these smaller teams that are getting in the tournament, they're a lot more of a veteran team now. You see a lot of 1 and done, 2 and done players. So those guys at those bigger schools, a lot of time are freshmen to sophomores, they're best players. When you're, junior, senior, you've been in tournaments, whether it's your conference tournament or the NCAA tournament for a couple of times, man. it's not the same effect. You know, the first time you go from high school playoffs to like college playoffs, that's a big jump.
Yeah.
So when you get there and you see the bright lights, big venues, you know, you got a team of men sometimes on the other side, and
Mhm.
you're still kind of a kid, you know, it can be tough. And I think you run into a lot of those matchups. And that's where I think we have the big thing with the 12 fives always, you know, ending up with the flip. I think it's going to happen not once, but at least twice, you know, in this year's tournament. And like I said, like you
Yeah.
said, every year that happens. So
Every
if you're
year.
not prepared for upsets, man, I don't know what you've been watching, but it definitely hasn't been March Madness. Maybe the NIT.
Yeah. And when it really comes down to it, like you said, you've got these small schools are getting guys who are playing 3, 4 years. And this kind of goes back to the conversation we've had on here before about the NBA brings in these one and dones, and then some of these guys pan out, a lot of them don't. And the reason why a lot of them don't pan out is because they didn't get a chance to develop their skills. And then once you get to the NBA, unless you're on a really bad team, you don't get enough playing time to develop your skill set.
Right.
So a lot of these one and dones would actually benefit greatly from staying in school a couple years.
Absolutely, man. I think when you're turning into saying that kids are going to be able to go straight from high school to the pros, you're going to get back into the thing. We can have a lot of kids end up in the G League,
Yep.
you know, because they're not really ready. A lot of them, like you have some every once in a while, but for the most part, a lot of these kids are not ready to go play with grown men at 8 as soon as they get out of high school. It's a big change. It's two high level changes at once. And I think, you know, you kind of have to look at those things because you have to look out sometimes for the best interests of young men because they don't always know for themselves. And that's that's going to be something to watch once this switch happens and they're able to go straight from high school again, how that happens and you know how that plays out.
I did want to take one quick second out to just have a moment of silence on our show tonight for the Duke basketball program, who is not playing in their first tournament in a very, very long time. So, RIP to your tournament streak, Duke. RIP. Well,
I'll also throw in there, you know, I believe Kentucky.
yep.
Also, RIP to yours as well. And North Carolina, while not looking too strong right now, we are in the tournament. I just wanted to make sure that that was also pointed out.
Yes. Just, it is what it is, man. Just, kind of throwing it out there for people, man. On a more serious note, with that though, just a serious RIP. Since our last show last week, we did lose a sports icon in Marvelous Marvin Hagler.
Yeah.
For those of you not familiar, old school boxer.
Oh yeah.
So definitely, something we just want to take a second to acknowledge because he was during his heyday, man, a huge star and had a big impact on boxing.
He was literally marvelous. You know,
yeah, he was marvelous. He was marvelous.
Nice hands. You know, he could move in the ring. He'd do some damage to you. For his size and height, he had some quickness with him, man. He was a good boxer.
Yeah,
should definitely be missed, man. Definitely be missed.
So jumping back into the NCAA tournament here, man. The question I want to ask you, the question I want to ask anybody tuning in, whether you're live on replay, how your bracket looking?
Well, my bracket's fine.
Yeah, I think it all kind of depends on what your expectations were. If you felt like you wanted to have a perfect bracket, yeah, that's probably already done. But anybody out there with a perfect bracket still, holla at us. Let us know. But
well, depending on the outcome of the Carolina game, I can still have a perfect bracket. If Carolina loses, it's a wrap.
how are we defining perfect bracket? Because I know you didn't pick Oral Roberts to.
I actually did.
Did you?
Yes, sir.
You should have did that on the show last week, so we all had evidence.
Well, I wouldn't have had the knowledge on the show last week to think to pick Oral Roberts, but because I had time between the show to actually look at teams, I thought there was a strong matchup that they could actually win. Okay. And because it was a 12-5, you got to pick a couple of them every year.
Yeah. Actually, that wasn't a 12-5, sir. That was a 15-2.
Well, 15-2, 12-5. I treat them about the same
Okay.
mentally.
Okay.
But
Mentally,
yeah, but
emotionally.
by tomorrow, my bracket will be done. Pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure which Florida State team is going to show up tomorrow, so I'm not. I don't know what we're going to do. We should be able to win. I'll just leave it at that.
Well,
but you already know what my concerns are. I've expressed them.
yeah. Well, my concern is I know that at some point that poor game is going to happen. It looks like it's tonight. We also have this penchant for Carolina to come out slow and then decide we're going to make a roaring comeback. But now you're in a tournament, and one of these teams is going to keep smacking you in the face and not allow you to do that comeback. So hopefully it's not Wisconsin, but hey, that bad game is going to get us whenever it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it does happen, man. I mean, it is what it is. So in terms of keep the conversation on basketball, had a couple of moves get made in the NBA as well. So you want to talk about those real quick?
Sure do. So a lot of people know that the Bucks traded for PJ Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
It was a big move for them. They didn't give up a lot in terms of actual assets to get PJ Tucker. I don't need to go into the details of the trade. Essentially, PJ Tucker is the main part of the trade, and he's going to the Bucks. Some picks were switched, some other minimal players, Radonis, Karukas. They got a 2020 second round pick swap, and they got a 2022 first round pick. The Rockets ended up getting DJ Augustine, DJ Wilson. Our 2021 first round pick, it's a pick swap if we're outside of the top 9. And then the 2023 first round pick from us as well. So not a bad trade either way, I don't think, because you you got a guy that should be able to help you immediately with a deep playoff run. And Milwaukee's in the East, so you're in a situation where you have to get better to contend with Philadelphia and Brooklyn. You're sitting at 3. You're still kind of fighting off Boston at 4, but you're attempting to rise up. So this was a good trade for them, a nice bully ball guy that I think will go well playing with Giannis, right attitude. Maybe he can bring out that nasty Giannis every night. And speaking of Giannis, I just want to say a lot of people may be mad, but what he did last night, I thought it was amazing. So what Giannis did was scored a bucket near the end of the game against the Sixers and just sat down on the floor in the middle by their logo. He just sat down.
He just sat down, man.
That was a celebration. He just sat down and just gave them the scowl. Loved it. For those who have seen the other show that I'm part of, the NBA Carousel, that's the team that I talk about. And what I like is I like Giannis as a player, which is the reason why I was okay with doing that team versus doing, of course, my Nuggets, who I would have preferred to have done. But what's great about it, man, is he's a guy that he's starting to make some of the shots, and I'm starting to see a nasty streak, Giannis. And that's one of the things I've always thought he was missing. Nasty streak, more consistent jumper. I always felt like if he had those two things, we're looking at a monster. And we're starting to get those, and that's why he's the reigning back-to-back MVP.
Yeah, he's definitely a guy who needs a little nastiness in his game. So, that's definitely something that you want to see him continue to develop. And I mean, we've talked about it during the offseason. They made a couple moves, but they didn't really do enough in either one of our eyes to push them over the top.
Right.
So this is just, you're doing just a little something. You're bringing in one more guy who just gives you that little bit of an edge. And will this be enough to put them over the top? I don't know. We'll see. A lot of times it's not the guys who go out there and put up the most points necessarily that make the biggest difference. Prime example, you look at the Lakers last year, a guy who had a huge impact on that team, especially in the bubble, was Dwight Howard. He didn't put up a ton of points, but his ability to just be annoying, to get under the skin of guys, to, just kind of be that fly, essentially, in other people's ear, be that gnat that was just bothering people. That won the Lakers a couple of games. And that might have been the difference between them winning some of those series and not winning some of those series. So you need those kind of guys. You need a guy that's willing to get in there and be a little dirty and, and play a little extra or get a little chatty with somebody and get under their skin. You need those guys on a team.
Absolutely. And if you don't have them, there isn't a way to really get successful. Because what you have is you get later in the season, the game scores go down. It's harder to get shots, and it's more about imposing your will, especially when you get that last down the stretch in the playoffs. So a guy like PJ Tucker brings that. The Bucks did make another move. It's less noticeable, but actually very intelligent. What they did was they traded Torrey Craig to the Suns for cash considerations. So they were able to bring in some cash, open up some another roster spot, you know, and put themselves in a position so if a guy becomes available via buyout or the right trade, that they're able to add someone else to the roster and, you know, not have to actually trade a player to get that person. So another smart, I think, move for them to see what's out there, because I do feel like we'll have some people, I don't know who yet, but I feel like we'll have some guys that'll, you know, just get waived, you know, around that trade deadline or bought out, and then they'll be able to go where they want to go, and having an open roster spot just allows you to pull them right in. So sneaky but intelligent move. Then we also had the Miami Heat make a move as well. This is a team we talked about even, I think, last week, and I know a couple of weeks ago. It felt like they needed at least one more piece. So they went and they grabbed Trevor Ariza. They were able to get rid of Myers Leonard, who we know had, you know, a little situation happen. We're not going to talk about that tonight, but, well, we could, but, you know, a little situation happened. So they were able to get him out of town. And they also sent a 2027 second round pick to pick up Trevor Ariza. Smart move on Miami's part. We talked about this a little bit before the show started. For me, you got a guy that can kind of replace some of the things that you're missing with losing Jay Crowder. I don't think people understand how important Jay Crowder was to that team last year because of the flexibility, the ability to go out, hit shots, but also take it to the hole. He was another guy that was a very strong defender. Did not require the ball a lot to still stay in the game, play hard defense, and make shots when called upon. That's the same kind of ilk or cut of the player that you're getting with Trevor Ariza. So you're bringing back in something that you definitely were missing. And I think he's going to bring a little bit of a nasty edge to him as well. I did read a report earlier that I believe this is the 11th time that Ariza's been traded. And that's crazy for a guy who's never been a problem in the locker room. But it just says to the fact that, you know, he's a guy that a lot of teams covet and are willing to bring in. So that's, that's an interesting thing. But the fact he's actually been around long enough for it to happen, I guess, is also a positive and shows that, you know, he's a guy that could definitely fill a certain role for any team. And I think Miami did make themselves better for the playoffs with adding him. Yeah.
I think the thing with Ariza is he's one of those guys that is good enough to stick around, right? He's a role player who has value in certain skills, but he's also a guy who I think early in his career, people expected a lot more of him. He looked like a guy who's going to be able to develop to become more, and he never quite took that step, which is why I think you've also seen him maybe get bounced around a little bit. So he's a guy that people will bring in when they have a need for a specific skill set, but he's never developed to the point that people feel like they can't get rid of him.
Well, yeah. I mean, all the trades show that, but I mean, I just say that, you know, like I said, in the right situations, I think he is a difference maker. Sometimes we have expectations as the media, as, you know, whoever on what a player is actually going to be. But at the end of the day, being a productive NBA player, you know, that's good enough. You know, everybody's not going to be an all-star. Everybody's not going to be a superstar. But if you can be a solid role player and build yourself a quality career in this league, man, in that league, you've done something.
Yeah. And the thing is, man, one of his greatest strengths is something that's very important in the league. He's a good 3-and-D defender.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in this day and age of the NBA, you need a couple of those. You don't have those, you're going to get hurt.
Put in the dirt.
I mean, you know, unless you get a whole bunch of Ray Allen types over there sprinting 1,000 miles per hour around the court, closing out on people.
Shuttlesworth.
Oh, Shuttlesworth. Oh, JC. Oh, JS.
I mean, there's a lot of people that could get better. Your Lakers could use a few more pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Several teams could. LaMarcus Aldridge is a guy that's bouncing around out there something's gonna happen with, and there's other guys. So the main thing is let's just keep an eye on those NBA free agents, or excuse me, NBA trades, because I think we're going to have some trades, or we're going to have some free agents by guys getting released that may not be a fit in certain places anymore. So it'll be interesting for everyone just watching that. Just watch out for that, and we're gonna get some good things are gonna happen.
Yeah, one guy that I've seen mentioned with the Lakers quite a bit. I'm not really convinced if he's a great fit, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Is Andre Drummond?
Well, I will say this: a glaring weakness for the Lakers is you're missing JaVale McGee and Dwight Howard drastically.
Yeah.
So if you could bring in a guy like Drummond, who's another one of those just classic centers, he's not going outside and shoot Jays. He's going to the rim. He's dunking. He's getting rebounds. He's playing old school big man basketball. And the way your team is built, you really do need someone to play that role. Harold's done fairly decent in that role. I think it's tough for him because you're asking him to go out there a lot of times with backups. But I think he's done, fairly decently with that role. But you really need a guy with more size and more height to be more dominant against some of the bigger bigs in the league and kind of be a presence to keep guys from feeling confident driving in and making moves. And I think that is a hole that the Lakers have. A lot of teams have that hole, but since you guys have aspirations of being back-to-back champs, that's definitely something that you're going to want to try to fill.
Yeah, I wasn't really sure if him specifically was the right guy for that. But I mean, if that's who is available, then you get. I mean, I'd rather fill that spot with a guy that's maybe not quite the perfect fit, but that you can make work versus just leaving the hole.
Yeah, pretty much. I hope Denver finds a way to get some more scoring because inconsistency on offense has become a killer.
I hope you don't. Just saying.
Well, I hope you don't get Drummond or anybody else.
So much bitterness, man. So much bitterness on this show.
I'm just being completely honest.
This is the great thing about sports, man. There's no love whatsoever.
No love. I hope the Lakers trade like 3 of their starters for somebody that turns out to be a scrub.
Look, man. Now you sound like some of these people that we play fantasy football with.
Just in case they were watching me. Just in case they were watching.
Yeah, I ain't saying no names, but they know who they are.
Just in case they were watching me, give them a little love. Let them know that, some people may think the way they think. Not really, but anyway.
Well, I mean, if the fact that nobody's accepted the trade in 3 years didn't tell them, Just throwing it out there, man. Just throwing that out there. Why everybody keep declining my trades? Because they suck.
Because they stink. That's why.
Because you be over there trying to trade starters for backups. That's why. What if I give you these 3 backups for your one starter?
I'll just keep my starter. Thank you.
And I'm not even talking about backups on your roster. I'm talking about some real life backups.
So dudes, will you be like, why did you even draft him? What are you doing?
Why is he even on your roster at all?
What are you doing on anybody's NFL roster? I don't care if you have like 5 extra spaces. What are you doing?
Oh, man. So speaking of fantasy football in the NFL, there's this little thing going on right now in the NFL, man, called a free agency. I don't know if you heard of it or not. I know who definitely has heard of it though. It's the New England Patriots.
They have,
because they buying up folks like they playing Monopoly.
They are. They are. Now I have to say before we get
what up, Witty Flo?
What's up, Witty? I have to say before we get to that, there's an NFL story that we have to talk about.
Okay, I know what you're gonna say. I was gonna say that for later, but go ahead.
We gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about it. So there's a lawyer that basically started out by going out and on social media
Hmm.
talking about Deshaun Watson and how he's this bad guy and everything.
Hmm.
Came out with one person at first. I believe that was one of the masseuse, stating that that Deshaun Watson had met the masseuse online, booked an appointment, and forced the masseuse to do some things that they didn't want to do. He was talking about how, just kind of going in on Deshaun Watson. Deshaun Watson's basic comeback was, look, gonna prove it's wrong. It's just somebody grab, whatever.
Hmm.
So, said lawyer, same lawyer, has gotten more female masseuse with similar stories. So we really don't have time to go through all of them because there's like 12 or so now, supposedly. But the one that intrigued me was one that came out a few days ago, and it was, I think, the third one. So she's also a masseuse. So she says
Hmm.
that she was forced to perform oral.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know if I'm missing something, but you can't not consent to perform, or unless you're like pushed down and you know something's forced. So a little iffy on that. Also, you know, it sounds like it seems like timing wise, it's very coincidental that this is coming out right around when he's wanting out of Houston.
Yeah.
So, just a couple of pieces of food for thought for me. I'm going to hold off on saying that there's no truth behind what's happening because I want to get more information to come out. And I'd also like to hear from Deshaun. What we have is a guy that's never had any issues. All of a sudden, all these people are saying that this one thing happened. Does raise a red flag. Some people may say, "Where there's smoke, there's fire." There's a possibility, but I just think the timing is very, very um, advantageous for an organization that does not want to let a guy go that does not want to be there.
Yeah. I will say this. A lot of people like to use this like where there's smoke, there's fire analogy. And I say you're absolutely right. Where there's smoke, there's fire. But the question is who set the fire? And that is what a lot of people don't like to recognize. Now, I told you yesterday when we talked, I have a problem with the way these things play out. And my problem is when a female makes an accusation like this, she's given full protection, which I have no problem with, by the way. I think that's completely fair that she should have legal protection and have her identity blocked. Okay. What I have a problem with is that as a man, the mere accusation of something like this can completely destroy your image. We've seen this multiple times with different guys who were found innocent. Yet, even still later, years later, people still make jokes, they still make comments, they still make assumptions about that person's guilt. So, I have an issue with the fact that the man's privacy is also not respected in these situations until he's actually found guilty of something. That's just my personal take on that. And like you said, I don't know what the overall, story is here. I don't know if this is something that's being fabricated against him, that this lawyer maybe has a grudge, something else going on. He's like going out and getting these people to do this. I don't know if this is actually something that John has been doing, and this is the first thing that's coming out. I'm not gonna make any assumptions about that one way or the other. I will say that just because you get a bunch of people to say something doesn't mean it's true. So don't get fooled by the fact that, oh, it must be true because there's a whole bunch of people coming out. That's not necessarily true. I would honestly just hope that most people are going to kind of sit back and let the situation play out and see what happens.
Oh yeah. I think Whitty had some
Yeah, I
comments
mean,
on
I would
that as
agree.
well.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, just from the fact that and I'm kind of approaching this from the fact that sometimes people aren't always who they put themselves out to be publicly, right?
Right.
Sometimes behind the scenes they different people than what their public persona is. But these accusations definitely do not match his public persona of what we've seen to this point. And it's almost unfathomable that you have had a situation where he actually managed to get all the way through college. Because let's be honest, he could have made these kind of threats against people's career when he was a quarterback at Clemson. He was a very big deal at Clemson. So these kind of things could have been happening when he was in college. They could have been happening when he was in the NFL already. So for this just to be coming out, the timing of it, as my co-host pointed out, makes it seem suspicious. And it's always interesting how stories like this always seem to come out at the most convenient times.
Right. Yeah, it's very interesting, man. I hope that these things are not true, but if they are, man, very disappointed in you, Deshaun Watson. Very disappointed if they are true. But we're going to see. And if they're not true, I would hope that Deshaun Watson and his team are going to attack this lawyer with a defamation lawsuit.
And I will also add to that I hope they drag this lawyer name through the mud.
Yes, every one of his infidelities and all that. I would love for those things to be brought out, just as he has tried to do, true or not.
Yep. So, I mean, that is what it is on that. I think we're both kind of in agreement here that that's all you can really say until more evidence comes out one way or the other. I think it would be foolish to make any assumptions one way or the other right now. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people already have, but that's not how we gonna do up in Hill, okay? Not how we roll on the play callers. Y'all know we don't go with that in the window stuff around here, okay?
Yeah, we do this crazy thing called find out what actually is going on, and then give our opinions based on that actual information. Those crazy, it's revolutionary. A lot of people don't like it, but hey, that's how we roll.
Yeah. No shenanigans over here. It's not how we roll.
No hogwash.
No poppycock, no hogwash. Yeah, none of that.
None of that.
If you're a fan of hogwash and poppycock, go somewhere else.
I'm sure there's several different places, 3 and 4 letter networks that will be more than happy to give you all of that you want.
Yep. If you're not sure which ones they are, they'll be showing live NFL games in the fall.
Or just put it like this, all of them.
Yeah, all of them.
Make it real simple.
I was really saying. That's
Yeah,
what I was really saying. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying too.
Exactly. Now, man, that we've covered that, we can hop back to what we were talking about here. A couple of things I want to highlight. Obviously, we got to start with what you were talking about New England. So New England has done something that's very un-New England-like. Excuse me, that snapped in free agency.
Just straight snap. Bro.
And when I say snapped, I'm just going to read you the list of players.
I'll watch it. Hold on, I gotta go put this one up. I gotta put this up.
Hogwash is a fun word. I'm a little impartial to poppycock as well, Witty Flow. Just a little bit impartial to that one. But yeah, we got who New England has signed. I'm just gonna give you that list. Okay. You got Cam.
We have no time. We only have like 25 minutes. It's in their time.
I'm gonna go fast. Cam Newton, Nelson Aguilar, Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Trent Brown, David Andrews, Ted Karras. Those are all the offensive players. Now we're going to hit the defense. We've got Dietrich Wise, Davon Godchild, Montravius Adams, Henry Anderson, Matt Judon, Raekwon McMillan, Kyle Van Noy, Justin Bethel, Jalen Mills, Cody Davis, and then they re-signed Nick Folk. I know for me, I'm going to talk about two of those guys that I know very well. Jalen Mills, the safety from Philadelphia, got a 4-year, $24 million contract. a lot of people are going to look at it and laugh. A lot of Eagles fans are going to look at that and laugh. We never put him in the correct system for his skills. He will bite on a double move like there's no tomorrow. So you put him in situations where that's not going to be there, because if you put him where he has to guard someone in the slot that will make a double move, that's getting away from him. But he has skill, right? He has the ability to play. So if you put him in the right situations, which Bill Belichick is great at doing, you can get some production. And obviously, to give him a deal for 4 years and $24 million, you feel confident that you can fix some of the issues enough to make him serviceable for the way you want him to play. And then the other one I'm going to talk about is Nelson Aguilar. Nelson Aguilar, to me, is a head case. But last year with the Rams, with the Raiders, so many teams out west now in one state, but with the Raiders, or one area, because of course the Raiders are now with Vegas, but Oakland,
I know what you mean.
LA so long. But he kind of rehabilitated his career a little bit, and they signed him to a 2-year deal worth $26 million. So they're giving him $11 million base salary a year and $2 million in incentives. So they believe that whatever issues he had in Philadelphia clearly were just with that team. Even with the Raiders last year, there were times where he still dropped the ball, but because he's a big play guy, those get overshadowed. But again, you're bringing back Cam Newton. He needs weapons. Mm-hmm. So you did what you had to do.
So Woody Flo actually says that he doesn't think they're done on defense just yet. And I would not disagree with that, but do keep in mind, Woody, that as we pointed out last week, they did have a lot of people that opted out. A lot of those people were on defense.
Yeah.
So those people will be coming back this year. So it'll be interesting to see how they go about that. The one guy that I'm real familiar with that they signed was Kendrick Bourne. And I feel like they overpaid for him a little bit. But he is a guy who, while he's not a elite wide receiver, he's not even what you would consider to be a number one receiver. He is a very solid receiver. He's got good hands. He runs great routes. So, he's the guy that we've seen, or I'm saying, I'll put it this way. He's the type of guy that we've seen have a lot of success in New England in their offense. Guy who can go out, run good routes, get some separation, and has good hands. That's really what they've had over the years. And they've made guys who are just average or slightly above average receivers look really good in their offense. So it'll be interesting to see what they do as far as their wide receivers, because neither one of those guys really stand out to you name-wise. But what they went and did at tight end, that's kind of scary, because they got two monsters at tight end. So can't have some weapons now.
So here's the thing for me. You say two monsters. I say a monster and a very solid upper second tier guy. Maybe lower first tier, but somewhere between upper second, lower first tier and Hunter Henry. Now, Jonnu Smith, monster.
We'll see. We'll say monster, and then monster when healthy, which is hardly ever.
So the other part of this is we know that Belichick likes the two strong tight ends. He likes to run the formations where he has two tight ends. So his receivers aren't as important, but he does have two guys that he needs plays. They can make those plays, and they're not guys that are going to be sitting there looking for the ball 20, 30 times a game. They're fine if they get 5, 6, 7 catches a game. They run their routes. They do their thing. So I think he's gotten the right type of guys, like you said, for the offense that he wants to run. But those tight ends, he's replenished those Gronkowski days when he had him and Hernandez before everything came out with Hernandez. He's kind of got two solid dudes playing tight end for the first time in a few years. And if they can find a way to keep Hunter Henry healthy, which
good luck.
But if you can, those could be a monster group of probably the best tight end group in the league, because I think ours is breaking up.
Yeah, so what he says, they might scoop Keanu Neal. I'm actually kind of surprised where Dan Quinn going to Dallas, that Dallas hasn't made a bigger push to bring him in. But I haven't even seen them tied to him at all. So,
Well, that's the thing. You just signed a safety, right? You signed Jalen Mills. He's going to play safety. So you kind of already had signed your replacement, because this clearly wasn't something, even though we're just finding out about it, I'm pretty sure the Patriots knew that Chung was not coming back.
yeah.
And actually, Chung and Mills have a lot in common as far as the fact that both of them came to Philadelphia, didn't quite, perform as well as thought over their time in Philadelphia. And then we're going to see if he's going to be as successful as Chung was able to be in New England.
So I'm not going to turn this into the 49ers show, but I do have to talk about this Trent Williams deal because it is, in all honesty, it's actually quite genius. A lot of people have probably seen the deal. They got caught up on the overall numbers. And what they failed to realize is the way this contract is structured. This year, he's only going to count $8 million against the cap. Next year is going to be 14. And then I think it's like 23 and then 26. And then the last year, when it's like 34 million against the cap, is basically a phantom year, at which point there's no dead money on the contract at all. And that year was only put in literally so that he could be the highest paid offensive lineman ever by a meager $10,000, which I just thought was like hilarious, that he was just like, I just want to be the highest paid offensive lineman by 10 G's.
Well, man, the thing is, a lot of these guys that sign these big deals, they sign that phantom year deal. We have a couple of guys that we've done that with in restructuring. What I would like to understand is what in the world is going on in Kansas City? Can we get someone from their front office that works in the department to just go to different teams and show them how to do this? Because they're restructuring like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's just freeing up money to just drop on people, just drizzling dough. It's crazy.
Yeah, just to respond to Woody's comment real quick about Trent staying healthy. The good thing is it's only $12 million in dead money after 2023. And like I said, the first 2 years are like a little over 20 million combined. So even if he's not 100%, it's not too big of an investment, honestly. But yeah, this Kansas City, man, what I want to know is, like, I understand the fundamentals of what they did, right? Like, I get this idea that you're restructuring and you're turning things into a signing bonus so that it doesn't count against the cap. I get that. It's basically the exact same way that we were able to only have Trent Williams be $8 million on the cap this year, right? We gave him a lot of it as a signing bonus. But how does that work out long term? What is the likelihood that this just burns Kansas City to the ground at some point? Because I know you didn't just give them a bunch of cash money up front. And if you're able to just take large chunks, I don't know, like 17 million alone for Patrick Mahomes and turn that into a signing bonus to free up 17 million in cap space. I mean, can we just go and pay Jimmy Garoppolo contract off this year right now and just not even have a cap hit for him? I mean, like, I don't even understand the logic here. Like, how is this even possible? There has to be some ramification down the road. Somebody gets hurt, somebody gets traded, somebody decides to up and retire on you. There has to be like some penalty, like where you have dead cap money for the next 40 years or some craziness has to come out of this. I mean, I refuse to believe that this kind of financial flexibility can be able to be created without some shenanigans and just things running amok, man. I just refuse. We're one of all the fun words tonight.
Now, Marty, definitely there's going to be some repercussions down the road. There's going to be some little consequences, repercussions from their actions. But I think it's just surprising how they were able to do it, right? They kind of went all, and I'm pulling this one out on y'all, all willy-nilly.
Willy-nilly.
Yeah, man, pulling one out for you.
Are we going deep in the bag?
We're going deep in the bag.
Deep in the bag, yeah.
But yeah, just, it's going to be going to be one of those things. It's got to bite them at some point, right? And it's going to bite them doing the lifetime contract that they gave Pat Mahomes. So at some point, that's going to be a negative. I guess they'll find a way around that too. But all jokes aside, it is impressive that they were actually able to do that. I've been kind of researching it a little bit. I don't have all the info that I want to go into detail on it now, but I'm still looking into it. I still want to get a little bit more on it because I would like for us to be able to do a little bit of that since we're a little cap strapped right now. We did
Right.
we did clear up enough money to sign 2 low level free agents. So hey, to go from
It-
40
it's
some million over to that,
it's
I
like
can
what are
live
we
with it.
looking at here? Is Kansas City on pace to be like 70 million over the cap next year or something? Like what?
And it'll be like 25 million over the cap from 2025 to 2029 every year. Something crazy. But yeah, man. So I just thought that was interesting and something that we should at least, acknowledge that there's something going on with some book cooking over there. Uh,
Man, I've been trying to figure it out all week, man.
yeah.
And we don't do numbers around here, man. We don't do stats on the show. So, for me to have to dig that far into the numbers, man, was a little painful. I'm not gonna front.
I don't mind digging the numbers every once in a while, But interesting team as far as to switch it back and bring it back to what we were talking about before free agency. Interesting team with free agency. So we talk about Houston and how they have this unrealistic outward comments that they're keeping Deshaun Watson.
Mm-hmm.
So interesting to me that if that's the case, you went and traded for Ryan Finley.
Mm-hmm.
You signed Tyrod Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
You also brought in Mark Ingram and Philip Lindsay to play running back, which I think were actually pretty good pickups. You brought in Andre Roberts and Dante Moncrief. Alex Erickson, whatever. But I think Andre Roberts and Dante Moncrief are 2 guys that can bring something to your passing game. You brought in 2 tight ends, Pharaoh Brown. You actually re-signed, and then Ryan Izzo, who you got in a trade with the Patriots. So they kind of dumped him to bring in their dynamic duo. But I think just looking at that, they made some other moves. They got Shaq Lawson, Derek Rivers, Kamu Grugier-Hill, one of the guys from the Eagles that's a pretty good linebacker, Christian Kirksey, to name a few. But I think what you see, we can go through every one, but we're not going to do that. But what I think you can see is offensively, they're bracing for the reality.
Yeah.
And Tyrod Taylor is a good guy to me to bring in to be a bridge if you need it, because he's been a bridge a couple of plays. So this might be his chance because it's got to happen. And see, what I don't understand is if you're Houston, why are you not doing everything you can to kill this lawyer? And I'm not actually killing, but kill this story about trying to kill what he's trying to do. Because at the end of the day, it's hurting your trade value, right? Because if it gets out that Deshaun's could be this type of individual, then people are like, hold on now. I don't think we're trading half of our team for a guy who could, not be around too long, where we have to hide all the female employees when he comes around. So, the football team doesn't have a quarterback. It's looking more and more like he might be going to the football team.
Well, man, I will say this much. If I am Houston and I do decide to just trade Deshaun Watson, the team that I've seen a lot of people mention that I am absolutely not trading him to no matter what is the Miami Dolphins. And I will tell you why. And now Houston might not view this the same way I do. I have a tendency to be a very petty person sometimes. But if I am Houston, I'm going to look at this from the perspective of I'm not giving you my franchise quarterback in exchange for you just giving my first round pick back to me. That doesn't go with me. I'm not doing that. I'm not like, no, you're not just going to give my pick back to me and then me give you a quarterback. No, that's not happening. I would trade him to anybody else. But I mean, they might not be as petty as me, so I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, it's pretty petty, man. Definitely, it's pretty petty. Now, another team that's made a noteworthy move, in my opinion, is said mentioned football team. So they are able to reunite a college wide receiver duo in the pros.
Mhm.
Now they signed Curtis
Yep.
Samuel, who
Mhm.
is the college roommate of their current best wide receiver. So, wise move, I think, from the football team standpoint, because you were able to get him on a 3-year deal worth $34.5 million. You might have actually overpaid a little bit, but you're able to get him in. Of course, it depends on the inner workings of the contract and the actual guaranteed dollars. But I think you put that duo out there together. They're going to push each other. It's going to be kind of what we expected it to be when we got the Juice Landry back with Odell Beckham, but that didn't quite work out the way we thought it would.
Yeah, the thing is, we said last week that they really needed to get another wide receiver on the other side of the field. And it needed to be somebody, not just like any wide receiver, but it needed to be somebody who could actually draw some attention away from him. And that's exactly what Curtis Samuel is. He's not a true number one wide receiver or anything like that, but he is a solid number two receiver, and he's a guy that you can't just ignore. And now Scaratier might still get double teams because they still don't have a third guy to take any pressure off. But just the fact that they have to at least think about who's on the other side of the field now is going to help out tremendously. So,
Yep.
you see which little comment.
Hey man, Fitzpatrick was a good pickup. Fitz magic, baby. You get him for
It's
a year
magic.
or two. You know what he's going to do. Is he going to be a long-term answer at this point in his career? No.
Yep.
I just want to say, I did say that my bracket was perfect, but the North Carolina game could definitely ruin that bracket.
It's ruined.
It's ruined. My bracket is probably one of the worst brackets in America right now. Thank you, UNC.
Would you like to tell? Would you like to tell everyone why?
Well,
I know why, because you told me the other day.
Oh well, because I am a homer when it comes to college basketball, a blind, unrealistic homer. I had Carolina in the Final Four.
We could not be more polar opposites. I'm over here talking about depending on which Florida State team show we might lose in the first round. And this dude over here got North Carolina in the Final Four.
Hey, in my defense, I did have them getting blown out in the Final Four when they apparently had the game that they had tonight. I thought they would have it later on. I knew we couldn't win a championship because every 3-4 games we have a horrible one. I just thought that we had a horrible one and then we're going to have a couple of good ones. But we decided to go stick it up and get blown out. And, this is the first time that North Carolina has ever lost in the first round under Roy Williams. They beat us 85-62. We deserved it. And we have maybe one guy on our team that should go pro. And he probably really shouldn't go, but I wouldn't be mad at him if he did go. We definitely need to get better next year. That's another way to put it. While we're talking about the NCAA, man, I know we still have some other football-related stuff to talk about, but I have to talk about this because I saw it and it really pissed me off. So I saw some videos and then I saw a player actually get on and do a TikTok and show. So we have the men and the women doing the tournaments and they're in the same bubble, in different locations.
Right.
They have the same amount of space for working out, same amount of space for eating. The men have a full gym of equipment to use. The women have one small rack of arm weights and yoga mats. The men have a buffet of tasty items that they can go down and get. The women get little small prepackaged or pre-made meals. What's so disappointing about it is, why do you have to have separate workout equipment, right? You're all in the same bubble together. Or
Yeah.
why can't you separate it if you need to separate it to where you give the women more than that? We have to get to the point in this country. And this is just a microcosm of kind of how things are going for several different groups. We talked about, Pacific Islander and Asian Americans last week. We've talked about, other groups of color in the past. We've talked about women before, but this is a prime example of how things just aren't improving the way a lot of people want to try to act as if they are. There is
Yeah.
no reason that they can't have the same buffet as men. There's no reason they can't even eat off the same buffet at the same time, right? They can
Right.
have a mask till they go to their separate area to eat. There's no reason they shouldn't have better workout equipment. We have to get to the point where these type of things are being, um, done correctly, and it's some equitable experiences here. We're talking about March Madness. It's not maybe as commercialized for the women, but they're still bringing the money. There's people still going to those games. They're still being televised, and they're still getting that same amount of hype.
Yep.
Maybe not to the same level as many people, but it's still the same hype. So I'm very disappointed in the NCAA for how that happened. Um, you know, I would say anyone who has a sister, daughter, cousin, aunt, mom, whoever, important females in your life, friends, whoever, you should be outraged at the fact that they can't get equal treatment on simple things.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing, man. And to be there at this juncture in time where we're talking about these things, where these things are coming up, what are you doing, NCAA? What are you thinking? How can you possibly allow that to happen in 2021?
You know, it's we had this conversation a couple years ago, when the whole Colin Kaepernick thing happened. And one of the things I remember saying to you was, I wonder how much good it will really do. It's great to bring awareness, but ultimately, is just bringing awareness going to create change? And, it was one of those things that honestly we couldn't really know until later on. And I do think that it's had some impact,
No.
not as much as we would like. And now I find us in a similar situation where we are saying the exact same thing about women and how they're not treated equally. And we're pointing out example after example after example of how they're not treated equally. And despite all the conversation, despite all the highlighting, despite all the awareness is being created, people are still making decisions as if they are blind, as if they are deaf. It's like they're just not even hearing the conversations. I don't understand how people can still be so completely tone deaf on some of these issues. I mean, it'd be one thing if you were to say, hey, you know what? Women's basketball doesn't bring in as much money. So maybe if you were justifying saying you can't put them in as nice of a hotel as you put them in just because of the revenue generated. Okay. That's maybe a fair point because you do have an argument in terms of the revenue generation. But they're in the same hotel. So really what you're doing is not just saying we can't give you equality. You're almost really saying we're going to give you your own stuff, not because you deserve it, because otherwise it would be equal, but because we don't want you interfering with anything that the men have going on. We don't want you taking away from their resources. For them to not get the same food in the same hotel is ridiculous. They're in the same hotel. Why are they getting different food? So, these are just things that it's frustrating to me because I see literally time after time people speaking up and pointing out to people what's going on, and still and yet decisions get made that ignore it.
Yep.
And it's frustrating.
The thing is, man, until the decision makers, the people who allow these things to happen, until they're brought under fire, until pressure is put on them, until fire are lit under their rear ends, these things are going to continue in so many walks of life. the fact of the matter is it all goes back to the same thing. Whatever the groups are that are feeling disproportionated, oppressed, not allowed to um, partake in things equally, until the people that are allowing these things to happen, that are generating these things to happen, until there's fire put in them, until they have to be held accountable for what they're doing, these things are not going to change. And that's what's sad
Yep.
about it, because they need to change. There needs to be change. It's not, a lot of people say, "Oh, black people is all black about black life, but don't care about anything else." It's not true. We would all be hypocritical if we said we only matter. That makes us no better
Yep.
than other groups. So, Asian American, Pacific Islanders, they matter, right? Um, Indigenous people matter. You know, every group of people matters. But in situations where there can be equality, and this is a perfect example, there's not, and that's really a shame, and it needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed immediately. It needs to be fixed, and it's something that needs to happen moving forward. And if it can't happen, then the people who are making these decisions need to be replaced with people who can make better decisions. Period.
Man, it's funny because it's like I've made the joke a couple of times over the years where people, they'll bring up the wage difference between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've been asked a couple of times over the year, well, as a man, why do you even care? Right. Like I've been asked this about other men. Like, why do you even care? And I'm like, because I have a wife, she has a job, and if some guy who's not as qualified or nearly as good as her is getting paid more because we're married, that's also messing with my money. And I say it kind of jokingly because it goes a lot deeper than that. But it is weird to me that so many men don't grasp the concept. They don't care about these things. It's like when things happen to women, that could be your wife, that could be your mom, that could be your sister, could be your daughter, it could be, or like if you're me, you don't have kids, it could be your best friend's daughter. So, these should be people that you should care what happens to them. And it's amazing to me how many people they just still have to turn it off. And we had this conversation offline when we talked about the Deshaun Watson thing earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And, what I tell you, part of the reason why I'm not jumping to any conclusions, part of the reason why I'm not just going to automatically jump down out and say, no, this isn't true, is because I would want to know that if anything ever were to happen to one of the women in my life and they came out and made an accusation like this, I would not want them to just be immediately dismissed. I would want their allegation to be taken seriously until they, until it was either proven, true or false or whatever. But I would want them to be taken seriously.
Absolutely.
And if I were to jump on here and just immediately dismiss these as, being lies and being set up, then I would be contributing to that kind of behavior. And I'm just not going to do it.
I hear that, man. I will say, as far as college sports go, man, at this point, it's on to Miami football.
Well, I'm going to say hopefully FSU football gets better than it's been the last couple of years. Otherwise, I'm going to really need the basketball team to step up. And then it's pretty much go Lakers, and hopefully San Francisco's fired their entire strength and conditioning team and got some new people in there because, yeah.
Well,
I don't know what happened to us last year, man. That was.
Everyone can see my list, and y'all know I'm in trouble for the next few years.
Yeah. Yes, you are.
We had a good run. We had a good run.
Are you trying to say the U's not back, man? Come on. But the U is always back. Silence.
The U is probably going to be the best team that I cheer for in the next 12 months.
Wow.
So I'm going to know very early on how things are going to go.
Yeah. Well, man, that is our time for the night. Appreciate everybody who joined in to the chat tonight. Appreciate y'all chatting with us, hanging out with us. Be sure that you come back next Friday night, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. PlayCollegeSportsTalk.com. Bring a friend. So let's go ahead and get this thing popping, man. I'm sure there's going to be some exciting talk next week. So
and I would
we'll
say,
definitely see y'all then.
I would just quickly say, I'm not going to hold it against anybody that didn't watch live tonight because I understand the NCAA tournament is going on, but that's what the replay is for. Hope to see you out there.
So if you are watching this on replay, we still love you, still appreciate you. Not as much as we would have if you would have came live and chatted with us, but we still do appreciate you nonetheless.
Well, I appreciate you either way. So that's from me.
Yeah. Well, I already said I was petty earlier, so
That's another way to prove that to be correct.
Man, I am who I am. At least I'm authentic. But man, with that, I'm going to go ahead and just remind everybody that when the clock runs down,
heroes arise.
And stats lie.
But sometimes, wow.
Nothing is a show.
There is no doubt.
Did it till the clock runs out.
It's him and I.
The play callers. Y'all better know that.
Yep.
Shout out North Carolina to ATL. See y'all next week.
Live and direct.